And welcome to Ask Your Academic. Today's session will cover the MSc in Food Security, and we're joined by our programme lead, and he's here to answer any questions you may have about the programme. A number of questions have been submitted beforehand, so we'll do our best to get through those. And if during the session you have any further questions, you can pop them into the chat box and we'll keep an eye on that. If you've got any questions that are specific to your application or funding, etc., I'll pop some useful links into the chat box for you to follow up with those. And then after the session, if you have any further questions, you can contact the administration team for the programme, and those details can be found on our website in the programme page near the top in the blue box. We are recording this session today, so that will be made available to you all afterwards. So we only have 30 minutes. So Gareth, would you like to introduce yourself and give us a bit of an overview of your programme?
Yeah, sure. I'm very happy to do that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Professor Gareth Jenkins. I'm the Programme Coordinator for MSc Food Security. Basically, our programme is about the challenge of feeding the very rapidly growing global population, essentially thinking about all of the agricultural, economic, social aspects of the problem of food security, how we feed the growing population. So I know in some cases food security, in some people's minds, tends to equal food safety. It's not a food safety program, it's a food security program. Food safety is an important aspect of food security, but food security is a really very wide issue, covering agricultural production of animals and crops, and then all of the aspects of how that food is produced and distributed to the global population.
Thank you. Okay. We're often asked about the project element of a master's programme. Could you tell us a wee bit more about that? So how students pick their topic and their supervisor?
Sure. So the project counts for 1/3 of the masters, starts at the beginning of May, finishes in the middle of August, following which there is a short period of assessment and people give oral presentations and so on. So essentially the project runs from the beginning of May to the end of August. So the projects work in a number of different ways. There are a number of different types of projects. Some projects are lab orientated or lab based. Others don't involve any lab work at all. So they are investigative dissertations, if you like. Sometimes you have a mix of the two. Some projects might involve analysis of existing data. Other projects might involve searching the literature for relevant information to the question they're trying to answer. So, lots of different sorts of projects. Basically, there are two ways in which the projects are offered. Firstly, members of our academic staff will suggest topics. So we have, a long list of topics that students could potentially choose. And secondly, in many cases, in fact, we allow students to suggest possible topics. And if we can supervise them, then we're happy to try to develop that topic with the student. So those are the two main ways in which, the project titles are decided. Then the student has to focus their topic on a particular question, and then they work with their academic supervisor to develop the actual project and the actual report.
Thank you. And can you tell us a wee bit more about how students will be assessed throughout the year?
Yeah, we like to assess in different ways because different students have different strengths. So, for example, some students are really good at writing, but not maybe so good at giving oral presentations. Others are the opposite way around. So we have a mixture of types of assessment. Every course has one or two elements of assessment in it, depending on how big, if you like, the course is. The project also is assessed somewhat differently in that it involves oral presentation, an interview with the student about their project, the actual project report, and so on. So we basically have a range of different types of assessment, ranging from oral presentations of posters, where the student discusses the topic, written work, written assignments of different sorts. So quite a range of different things.
And for the optional courses, when would students pick those? Is that at the very start, or do they pick them throughout?
No, I mean, the students don't pick their optional courses at the start. Sometimes students get a little bit confused about what they need to register for. But basically, at the initial registration, the students should enroll into the 3 compulsory courses, the 3 20-credit courses that come in the first semester. They are on Introduction to Food Security Crops, Production of Food from Animals. And they should also enroll for the project, because they're all going to do a project. But the other courses, the other optional courses, they shouldn't enroll for it initially. We have a meeting usually in the middle of November, where we present all of the optional courses to students, after which they can start to finalize their choices. But it's important that we tell the students about the courses also once they've had some initial experience with our program, so that they can make informed decisions rather than just picking courses at random, if you like, by the name of the course at the beginning, before they actually start. So no, we do that in November.
And then someone asked, will the course cover all the practical knowledge required to work at industrial level?
I mean, probably not, because industry is a very broad thing and different companies have different requirements, and we couldn't possibly satisfy all the requirements of all the companies. What we try to do is offer students practical experience in laboratory, and if they're doing a project, practical experience of whatever the project is about. So they will, depending on exactly which courses they opt to do, they will have the opportunity, for example, to get molecular biological skills. They will have the opportunity to see animals. They will have the opportunity to, get information about crops and so on. So it's not an intensive practical course. Not all students want to do practical work, so we provide the practical work as options. So we have an optional course on molecular lab skills, an optional course on plant genetic engineering, both of which provide laboratory experience. And then depending on the project, if the student wants a practical project and the topic is possible, then we would do that. But yeah, so we give students a range of skills and knowledge and experience and understanding of food security, but we can't possibly do everything that everybody would want.
That's fair enough. And can you tell us about how much time students are likely to spend in classes, and then what's expected of them out with class time?
Yeah, sure. So doing a master's, and certainly doing our master's, is a different experience to what students will have had in their undergraduate courses. Particularly we find overseas, in some countries, the undergraduate courses are very intensive in lecturing. So, students might be in lectures all day, every day. Master's study is really rather different, because what we're trying to do is to encourage independent learning on the part of the student. So an average day here might involve 1 or 2 lectures, maybe totaling 1 or 2 hours, and won't necessarily be lectures every day. So during a week, a typical week, a student might only have maybe 6 lectures or something like that. It varies over the year. So students have a lot of time that they're not in lectures, and that time is for independent learning. So we want students to go away and find information, read about information themselves, which is obviously relevant to the courses and relevant to the assessments that they have to do. So they will spend a lot of time doing that sort of reading, with obviously some guidance from the people who are running the courses, but finding their own information, becoming independent in searching for knowledge, critically assessing the information they find, and then using that information to complete their assignments, whether it's an oral presentation or a written assignment, whatever it is.
And do you know what sort of jobs graduates from the programme go on to do?
Um, quite a variety of jobs. I mean, we find it difficult to keep track with everyone after they graduate because a lot of students go back to their home countries and don't tell us what they do. But when we have, gathered information, and when students do contact us, we find that they do all sorts of different things. So basically, a fair number of students go on and want to do a PhD, or in some cases further master's study. So we have had some students staying in Glasgow for a PhD, others go elsewhere to do their PhD. We have quite a lot of Chinese students who go and do PhDs in China, for example. Then there are those that want to get some other real job, if you like. So we have people that go into the food industry in some way or other. So, for example, they might be involved in producing food, selling food, marketing food, doing the economics aspects of it, food quality. We've had people involved in the EU in monitoring food quality and so on. We've had all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I think we have somebody working at Manchester Airport who checks, food being imported into the country and so on. So then there are people who do things that are nothing to do with food. So it's, a master's is just very good training, intellectual training, training in time management, working independently, and so on and so on. So the general skills that people get from doing a master's are going to help them do all sorts of things. So great variety of things that people do after they graduate.
And is there anything students starting in September can do to prepare for their studies?
Mm-hmm. I think, firstly, be very clear what the program is about. So go onto the program website, have a look at the structure of the program, compulsory and the optional courses, have a look at the information that's presented about the courses. So they've got a real understanding of what the program includes and to make sure, obviously, that is what they want. That's not been a problem before, but I think it's an important thing that, students should be aware of what they're letting themselves in for, if you like. Secondly, then start doing what we want you to do, which is independent reading. Go and find information that's relevant to the program. So a very good source of information that's relevant to food security is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the FAO.org. So if you go to FAO.org, go to publications, you will find that there are probably thousands of reports that have been written by the FAO, certainly hundreds over the years. Go, for example, to the most recent ones. The State of Food Security in the World, for example, is an annual report where you will get lots of relevant and valuable information. So start reading those sort of reports, I would suggest. The other thing is, if our program is very broad, so we cover everything from the sort of social economic aspects through crops, through animals. We obviously don't expect people to be experts in everything. There's a little bit of molecular biology in there. So any area which the student feels that they are less familiar with, good idea to go and do some background reading.
Thank you. And we always get asked, is it possible to work while you're doing your master's?
You'll find that the master's in itself is a lot of work. And if you want to be really successful, get a distinction or whatever, then work hard, particularly on the assignments. I would discourage people from working because they need to focus on their studies. On the other hand, I know that some students need to work to fund their, to fund the costs of their studies and to, fund their cost of living. So I'm not going to say, no, you shouldn't work, but I mean, I think, ideally people wouldn't because they want to be successful on the program.
Fair enough. And what sort of class sizes do you have for the different courses? I'm assuming they're a bit varied.
Right. So our program usually averages around about 40 students. Last year, I think it was 44. This year, it's 34. I think next year it's projected. I mean, it's very difficult to guess how many we're going to get, but it'll probably be somewhere between 35 and 45 at a guess. So for the compulsory courses, that's how many students there will be. For the optional courses, it depends very much on the course. Some of the courses are also taken by other students. And so, we get a mixture of students from food security and other programs, and then it's difficult to estimate the class sizes in those cases. Where it's a relatively small optional course, you might have only maybe 10 or 15 students. Where it's a big course involving other students, there might be 60 or 70. It just varies with the actual course.
Perfect. And that is all the questions that we have there. If anybody is watching and you've got any further questions, maybe Gareth said something that you'd like more information on, please use that chat box there to ask your questions. Gareth, I don't know if there's anything that you think hasn't been mentioned that you think is important to mention.
I think we've covered a range of things. We've talked about why students want to do the program. It's important that they want to study food security. I think a feature of our program is that it does include a lot of choice. So, or a fair amount of choice. So, there are optional aspects. So, we try to mix the compulsory courses, which cover, as I've said, the social and economic aspects, the general, introduction to food security is a broad topic. We talk about crops, we talk about animal food production. So it is broad, but then students can choose. So if you're more interested in animals, you can focus on the animal courses and do an animal project, or if it's crops, then obviously you can focus on crops and do a more crop-orientated project or whatever. So we do have a wide range of students. We have students with degrees in food science. Some students have degrees in economics or politics. Some students, and politics is probably not a good example, certainly students with economic backgrounds. We have students with biotechnology or biochemical backgrounds. We get all sorts of weird and wonderful first degree courses that students have done, and we take them all. As I say, we don't assume that everybody knows everything there is to know about food security, and we try to make sure that we give an introduction that enables everybody to pass the program without any problem. In fact, most students do really very well. So typically, if we had a class of 40, then we might get, I don't know, maybe 6 students who pass the masters, then maybe 30 students who pass with a merit, and then the remaining students maybe pass with a distinction. So, we've never ever had anyone not pass the program, and we do regularly get, a number of really excellent students with distinctions every year. So people do well, given the broad nature of the program and the backgrounds of the students. So as I say, it's breadth and choice, and we try and do our best to support the students as they work their way through. But as I've said, independent study and critical evaluation of information are 2 things that we're really looking for and will help to make people successful. Finally, the other thing I would really emphasize is English language. If you really struggle with understanding English and writing English and reading English, then I would suggest you wait for a year and improve your English skills before you come. If you can write reasonably well and understand and speak, then fine. But people who struggle with English often struggle with the assessments.
Thank you. We've not had any further questions coming through, so I think you have covered quite a lot there in quite a quick space of time. So yeah, if you've nothing else, Gareth, I think we can sign off. I think you've done a great job there of getting a lot of information across. So yeah, so thanks everybody for joining. As I said, we will be making the recording available for you. And if you do think of any questions after, please do get in touch with the programme administration teams and they'll get back to you and help you to answer any of your questions. So yeah, thanks again, Gareth, for your time, and we'll hopefully see you all in September. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.